Welcome everybody to this special share in honor of this year's Pesach, Erev Pesach, which will be this Shabbat. It's very unusual to have this scenario where Erev Pesach, the eve of Pesach is Shabbat, and the first Seder is Motzai Shabbat right after Shabbat goes out. And therefore, there is a great necessity to go through a number of points which will hopefully make things easier and clearer for us, and to be able to keep Pesach properly and do the preparations for Pesach properly as well. Before we begin, I want to thank Mordechai and Raya very much for hosting this and all the other classes on Zoom and Facebook Live. If anybody has questions, you can feel free to email them to me. I didn't get the questions yet if anybody did, but we can definitely discuss them afterwards. After the shir, you can be in touch with me with WhatsApp, and Amir Hashem will try to answer as many questions as possible. There's a lot to talk about, and I have tried my best, Be'ezrat Hashem, to organize my thoughts based on the order of events, which we will be discussing. And I pray to Hashem that Hashem should put the right words into my mouth so that we should be able we should all be able to keep this Pesach the way it is supposed to be. The main part of this class is dedicated to this year's calendar, where Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbat. There are other points that I do want to mention afterwards, which are just some basic laws about Pesach, how to do Pesach properly, which applies every year. Just 1 second, please. I'm just writing some notes as we go along. Okay. I want to mention also that this year we're going to have our Kabbalah Cafe this week. We're going to have our Kabbalah Cafe on Wednesday and not on Erev Shabbat. And it's going to be a very special Dvar Torah regarding Pesach. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone. Okay, so let's start with this coming Thursday. Usually, Erev Pesach has certain laws, and we do them on Erev Pesach. However, this year, since Erev Pesach is on Shabbat, therefore, some of the laws that we do, the mitzvahs that we do on Shabbat are moved to Friday, and some of them even to Thursday. We're talking about this upcoming Thursday, March 25th. So first of all, on Erev Pesach, it is a custom that the firstborn fasts. And that is because Hashem, the firstborn in Mitzrayim were in danger because there was the plague of the firstborn, and Hashem protected the firstborn, the Jewish firstborn, and therefore we need extra an extra day of Yeshua, and that Hashem should protect us. So this is done now on Thursday because we're not allowed to fast on Fridays. If you don't want to fast, which most of us don't, and even if you're not a firstborn, it is a good idea to hear a siyum, the conclusion of a Masechet, on Thursday morning. Because when you conclude a tractate of Torah, of Talmud, or Mishnah, then that is considered a holiday. Now, usually, Bedikat Chametz, checking for the Chametz, is the night before the Eve of Pesach. But we can't check for Chametz, obviously, on the night of Shabbat. So therefore, the checking of the Chametz this year is on Thursday evening, after it becomes dark, because we need to check for the chametz after we've cleaned the entire home for a couple of weeks, or even some people do a couple of months, whatever, we need to go with a candle, and there's a special bracha which is said. And I hope you are writing things down as I'm speaking. Be'ezrat Hashem, soon this class will be posted on our on our YouTube channel and also on Facebook. And so when we check for the chametz, usually we say a bracha before we start checking. We thank Hashem for the mitzvah of being able to check for the chametz. And after we finish checking, we say a paragraph which begins with the words Kol Chamira v'Chamia, that we nullify all chametz in our possession. And we do that on Thursday evening after we're finished cleaning. We say the bracha beforehand, as usual. And afterwards, we say the paragraph of Kol Chamira v'Chamia, nullifying in our heart all of the chametz, even if we may have not found some chametz which is there. But the main getting rid of chametz is the nullification. Because we're not allowed to own, we're not allowed to see, we're not allowed any chametz. And so therefore, when we have complete, sincere nullification of the chametz, so it's almost as if it's a piece of wood. It's not food. It doesn't have the same quality. It's just nothing. It's not mine. It's almost like hot air. Okay, now let's move on to the burning of the chametz, and that is on Friday morning. It is important for me to note at this point that in Eretz Yisroel we're going to change the clocks on Thursday night. Basically, 2:00 a.m. becomes 3:00 a.m. So the times that I'm going to tell you are pretty much exact. It's just that it's important for you to remember that the times of sunrise and the times of getting rid of chametz and times of midday, so on and so forth, are all considered 1 hour later because of the time change. Okay. Now, on Friday morning, we need to burn the chametz. Now, usually, we need to finish eating the chametz on the eve of Pesach before the end of the 4th hour, which we'll explain hopefully soon. And you have 1 more hour to burn the chametz. But this year, since we are allowed to continue eating chametz until Shabbat morning, which we'll talk about soon, therefore, we still do the burning of the chametz. And the burning of the chametz needs to be before 11:42 a.m. 11:42. And also, the plan A is to have your chametz sold by 11:42. The difference between this year, one of the differences is in this issue, regarding this issue, the difference between this year and any other year, if someone did not sell their chametz, forgot to contact the rabbi, and forgot to sell their chametz to the Gentile before Pesach, before the end of the 5th hour, like this year is 11:42. After that, the chametz is a lost case. You have to burn it. You have to get rid of it. It's not yours anymore. It's nothing. You're not allowed to have any pleasure from it. It can't be yours. You're not allowed to own it. This year, since we are, technically speaking, allowed to continue to have chametz, so you have till the entrance of Shabbat to get rid of the chametz. And so therefore, for example, Chabad of Rechavia, we have 2 ways of selling the chametz. We have a form, which people come into the office and fill out the form and do the kinyan, lift up. And so that chametz will be sold before 11:42. Then we also have another system, which you may have seen on your WhatsApps. And I believe we also sent out an email about this last week, that you can do it online. So that chametz will be sold also before 11:42. However, anyone that did not do it before then and goes into that link, fills out the form, and sells their chametz after 11:42, the rabbi who's going to be selling it will sell anything which has been any form which has been filled out from 11:42 till the entrance of Shabbat, which is approximately, candlelighting last week was approximately 5:15, 5:20. So this week is going to be an hour later plus a few minutes. So let's say approximately 6:25. The rabbi will sell the chametz, any chametz which is sold by then, through the online sale. Okay, I think someone just asked a question. So let me see if I can quickly. Okay, that's a great question. Someone just asked a question about the burning of the chametz and the bittul. So here's the answer. Number one, we burn the chametz because it's part of the mitzvah, part of the tradition of getting rid of the chametz. In the Talmud, in the Mishnah, and the Talmud explains, there are two opinions how to get rid of the chametz, because you have to totally get rid of it. One opinion is mefarer v'zoyer l'ruach. You make it crumb and you throw it into the air, and it just becomes nothing, basically. Rabbi Yehuda says that it has to be sreifa, you have to burn it. So when you burn something, it totally loses its entire entity. So that's the best way to literally get rid of it, because if you just crumb it and throw it there, it's still there. It's just in crumbs, not in the same unit as it was before. So because that's the original way, that's the best way to get rid of the chametz, therefore, we still do the burning of the chametz. However, whoever asked the question, I did not see the name, but whoever, it's a great question. This year, we do not say kol chamira v'chamia. Usually, when we burn the chametz, just like the night before, after we finish checking for the chametz, we said a paragraph that we nullify all the chametz. We say a similar paragraph, it's a little bit longer, right by the burning of the chametz, which would have to be done before the 5th hour. By us, it's 11:42. And so this year, we do not do the bittul. We do not do the second nullification, because we're still able to eat the chametz. Soon we're going to talk about how to eat chametz on Pesach, how to arrange your home. But I'm trying to give you the concept to explain, at least in short, the idea of what's happening this year. When do we do the bittul? We do the bittul, the nullification, Shabbat morning, after you've gotten rid of the chametz, and I'll tell you later how. Then, before the 11:42, then we make sure that we say this paragraph. We say the paragraph which is usually said during the burning of the chametz, but it's said on Shabbat morning, because that's when you have to finish. From that moment and on, you have to totally get rid of the chametz in your heart, sincerely, with all your heart. Okay, let's move on. Now, technically speaking, you're allowed to continue eating chametz until the next morning, Shabbat morning, because it's still Erev Pesach. But the problem is that because it's Shabbat, and Shabbat, we're not allowed to do any kind of preparation for after Shabbat, even though it's going to be Chag, it's going to be the Yom Tov, it's going to be the holiday. Nevertheless, we're not allowed to make any preparations. So for all practical purposes, your home should be entirely ready on Shabbat, before Shabbat, that is, with Pesach dishes, Pesach food, everything Pesach. But we have a problem. We can't have chametz and Pesach stuff together. Therefore, what we do is as follows. You take a couple of small challahs, and you put them in a Ziploc bag somewhere far away from the kitchen, far away from the dining room, far away from anything. But you want to make sure it's a Ziploc bag to make sure that by mistake there are no crumbs which fall anywhere. And then Friday night, you do the Kiddush, and then you go to a special area, whether it's let's say in the yard, you go downstairs. Here in Eretz Yisrael, it's much easier because we're allowed to carry in a public domain because there's an Eruv. If there's no Eruv, if there's no area which is technically blocked off, so then you can't go outside. We'll talk about that in a minute, hopefully. But you can go downstairs to a public area. You make sure that in the bag, that has the chalot, you have a napkin or a couple of napkins, and you eat carefully into the napkin. Make sure not to have any crumbs on your beard or on your jacket or on your tie or whatever, or on your dress. To make sure, just eat just a couple of enough to have. You can at least a kabeya, at least an egg size. You should be able to bench. And of course, we're not allowed to have matzah. Another practical idea is to do pita. So if you have a full pita, then it's apparently it makes less crumbs. So it's easier to break off a piece, tear off a piece, and to put it mouth size into your mouth, and then you're taken care of. We just finished talking about the subject of how we can be careful not to get the chametz anywhere into the house. Everything should be spick and span, even much before Shabbat. But on Shabbos we're not allowed to clean. So basically everything should be totally clean. All we have is this little bit of chametz, and we make sure to wrap up the napkin. You can either flush it down the toilet, or you can throw it out in a public garbage can. In Eretz Yisrael, we're allowed to carry in a public domain, and so you can throw it out in a it's called a makom hefker, a place an area which is free for all. It doesn't belong to anyone. So, for example, the big garbage cans is a good place to throw it out. Of course, make sure there are no crumbs as you're walking back into the house. That's really important. You want to make sure not to eat in a place where there's a carpet, because then the little crumbs can be caught into the little places of the carpet, and that is. Let me. Please give me one. You know what? Let's try to answer the questions at the end. This way we can go more smooth. And thank you for the questions that are being asked in the chat, so that I can see them hopefully towards the end. Okay. Now we are going to talk about preparation for Shabbat. So when we talk about preparing for Shabbat, it's a great idea to eat your Pesach stuff in disposables, like plastic plates, plastic bowls, and everything else. You of course want to rinse out your mouth before you go back into the dining room where you're going to be eating basically Pesach food. You want to make sure that there's absolutely no chametz anywhere near. So you rinse out your mouth on Shabbat. That is permitted. Also, we talked about napkins, and that is a practical way to keep clean from the chametz. Now, preparations for the Seder. I'm talking about it now in the same category as preparing for Shabbat, because we have to prepare everything for the Seder before Shabbat. Why? First of all, because on Shabbat we're not allowed to prepare for the next week, not only for the weekday, but also for if it's a Chag, if it's a Yom Tov. Also because there is something very important that we need to start the Seder almost immediately after we come home from shul after davening Ma'ariv, after Shabbat. The Seder should begin as soon as possible. First of all, because we're all excited going into Pesach, and we want to start as soon as possible and to have the matzah, relatively speaking, as soon as possible. And also, in order that the children should not fall asleep. And so therefore, it says in the halacha that we start immediately, if not sooner. That's number one. Number two, preparing for the Seder is important to light a candle, a 48-hour candle, or a 72-hour candle before Shabbat, in order that we should be able to light the Yom Tov candle after Shabbat finishes from a pre-existing flame. Because we are allowed to hold a candle on Yom Tov, not on Shabbat, but we're not allowed to ignite a new flame. So there has to be a pre-existing flame. And so it has to be a 48-hour candle so that it will go more than 24 hours. And if you're in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, where you have not only the Shabbat, Erev Yom Tov, and Sunday, which is the first day of Yom Tov, but you also have a second Seder Sunday night and Monday. So you need to have at least a 72-hour candle, which should take you about 50 or 60 hours from before Shabbat all the way till Sunday night, so that the candle, the Yom Tov candle, should be able to be lit properly. A couple of practical things that we should be aware of. You should, one of the things we do before Pesach is that you can put a sock or buy a special. It's like a little sock that you put on the faucet and also on the handles, so that obviously it was used, even though we kosher it, but because it's used so much during the chametz, so you cover it with a little rubber band. And so you want to do that before Shabbat, because we're not allowed to do sifting on Shabbat. So therefore, we do that beforehand. Another practical thing is to set your timers for the time that you would need for the Seder. So for example, if every Shabbat you set the timer that the lights should go out at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, but the Seder is going to go till 12 a.m. or 2 a.m., so then you want to make sure that the timers are set properly, because you're not going to be able to change it on Shabbat. We want to, according to the custom, we roast the zeroah. One of the things we put on the Seder plate is the neck or the wings. So we want to roast it, and we do that before Shabbat because we're obviously not allowed to roast or cook or anything on Shabbat itself. When we want to grind the chrein, the maror, the white chrein, so we're not allowed to make something to make something into crumbs to grind. So you want to grind it before Shabbat. Also make the salt water before Shabbat. We are going to have karpas, which is either a potato or an onion in the salt water. So these are a couple of tips. We want to make sure, excuse me, please, that everything is cooked properly, everything is ready before Shabbat, for not only for Shabbat, but also for the Chag, for Motzai Shabbat, Saturday night, and the Yom Tov. Now, let's move on to the next step. The next step is the davening of Shabbat morning. We wake up really early and we start davening at 6:30. Our minyan is going to be over here at 6:30 a.m. Many shuls, it's also going to be so. And the custom is not to drag out the davening. Our davening is never dragged out, but to make sure that we come home after davening and we eat the first part of the meal, including the chametz, before 10:39. Shabbat morning, we have to finish eating chametz by 10:39. So here, let me explain something that I alluded to earlier, and let me explain how it works. You see, the day is divided into 12 hours, and the night is divided into 12 hours, a total of 24 hours. Now, in halacha, it's called sha'ot zmaniyot, not a 60-minute hour, rather a relatively speaking hour. So, for example, sometimes in the fall and the spring, we'll have 60-minute hours. Let's say it's sunrise is at 6 o'clock a.m. and sunset is at 6 o'clock p.m. So you have exactly 6 hours of daylight and 6 hours of night. However, more often than not, then it's not exact. So, for example, in the summer, in the peak of the summer, you'll have the I see a question over here about the Zman. I'm telling you the times of the new time. I'm telling you the new hour, the new time. We said that we're changing the clocks at Thursday night. So I'm giving you the regular times. It was just important for me to mention that everybody should change the clocks. That we should make sure that we're on the right system. So in the summertime, for example, if sunrise is at 5 o'clock a.m., I'm exaggerating a little bit, and sunset is at 7 p.m., so you have 14 hours of daylight. Then you divide the 14 hours into 12. That's called sha'ot zmaniyot, relative hours. So when we say that we have to finish eating the chametz by the end of the 4th hour, that means that you divide the entire day into 12, and at the end of the 4th, that's called the 4th hour. Then we have one more hour, which is a little bit more than 60 minutes. As you see, we have to finish eating the chametz by 10:39, and then we have to finish getting rid of the chametz by finish eating chametz by 10:39 and finish getting rid of the chametz by 11:42. By 11:42. Okay, so we have to make sure that we've eaten the 2 little challahs, the lechem mishnah, gotten rid of almost everything as much as possible, and there's no more chametz in the house. We wrap everything up. Either we throw it in the garbage or we flush it down the toilet. By flushing it down the toilet is the best way, one of the best ways to get rid of it, because we have a mitzvah to get rid of all the chametz. Okay, so we're not allowed to burn it, of course, because it's Shabbos. So we're getting rid of the chametz by throwing down the toilet. We have to be careful not to throw pieces, because you could ruin the toilet and you'll be causing something, a damage. You'll be causing something wrong on Shabbos. So try your best to make it to do the smaller pieces, to put it down the toilet and with the napkin. Another way of getting rid of the chametz is by pouring a soap or chlorine, akenomica, pouring it on the chametz, and that totally gets rid of the chametz. It's totally, it cannot be eaten. It's not the same entity as it was. It's not food. You can't eat it anymore. So it's not considered chametz. In other words, it's the closest that we can get to getting rid of the chametz. And that has to be done before 11:41 on Shabbat morning. Okay, so therefore we have to daven early, get home on time, and to take care of all of that. Now, let's move on to the next subject. The next subject is having Seudah Shlishit. Usually, on a regular Shabbat, we have to wash Shabbos afternoon after Mincha. But we're not allowed to have any chametz after 10:39. By the way, these are the zmanim for Yerushalayim. So you just have to go on our website, jerusalemchabad.org, and you can look up your zmanim. You can look up according to your the calendar, and I believe you can look, for sure you'll see the zmanim for Yerushalayim, but I think you'll also be able to find for other places as well. If not, just go to chabad.org, and then there for sure you can find all the different zmanim, different times according in each place. Now, we do not, I see a question over here, we do not say a bracha. Great question. When we're getting rid of the chametz, every year on Erev Pesach, when we burn the chametz, we do not say a bracha. Only the night before we check for chametz, then we say a bracha. And then after we finish checking the entire home, we say the paragraph which is Kol Chamira V'Chamia. On Friday, so this, of course, this year we for sure don't say a bracha because we never say a bracha before we burn the chametz. But even of course on Shabbos, before we get rid of the chametz, we do not say a bracha. But as we mentioned earlier, we do say the Kol Chamira V'Chamia, not in the bathroom, but step outside the bathroom while it's going down. We say the special prayer that we're getting rid of all the chametz by 11:41, 11:42, 11:41 is better. You should have gotten rid of all of the chametz, not just literally, but also in your heart, which is equally as important. Usually in Yerushalayim, they have different public areas where people can burn the chametz on Friday. This year it will be Friday, and they're monitored by the fire extinguishers, and so fire trucks, fire engines, and personnel. So you want to make sure that you do it carefully. I'm not sure if it's going to be this year, but I'm assuming that yes. We were in the middle of talking about the Seudah Shlishit, the third meal. So there are different opinions, and I'm just trying to give you the most simple, straightforward opinion, and that is that since we're not allowed to have chametz, we're not allowed to eat chametz after 10:39. So what some people will do is they'll wash for the regular meal, bench, maybe daven mincha, or learn something for 5 minutes, and then wash again, and then finish eating the meal. It will be already a Pesach meal because the house is all ready for Pesach, and then you bench afterwards. So that will be considered, quote unquote, the third meal. So the first meal is Friday night, the second meal is right after davening, and the third meal is before the 10:39 mark. Now mincha, this is something which happens every year, including this year as well. We daven a regular Shabbos davening for mincha, and after that, we say part of the Haggadah, because usually it's Shabbat HaGadol. This year it's also obviously the Shabbos before Pesach is Shabbat HaGadol. It's a little funny because we're saying from Avodim Hayinu, part of a big chunk of the Haggadah, which we're going to say in a few hours in the middle of the Seder. But it's okay, that's the way it is. So from Avodim Hayinu, from right after the 4 questions, Man Nishtana, from right afterwards, we start Avodim Hayinu until the end of the paragraph, which is after Dayenu. We say that whole section after Mincha. I just want to make an important mention that very often there are books. You should try to go through your books, especially those that are used. They could have been on a regular chametz table, and sometimes we don't realize it. But we could be taking out during Pesach a siddur which is basically used for chametz, or this is really practical. It could be a real natural mistake where you take a bencher, birkon, which is usually used, and you put it on the table. I mean, the birkonim, the benchers, should be totally locked away from, like in the chametz area. You should not use any sidurim which are usually used on the regular circumstances in the home with the chametz and so on and so forth. Now, we're not allowed to do anything for the Seder until after Shabbos. So just like on a regular Shabbos, we're not allowed to clean per se. We're only a regular Shabbos. Let's say you want to clear the table. So you are allowed to do things which help you for Shabbos. So for example, clearing the table, it's not a nice thing. It doesn't give you a good feeling to walk into your dining room and see a messy table. So you're allowed to do the minimum of clearing the table and of course, brushing off all the crumbs. but you can't do any setting up for after Shabbos or setting the table. You can't do anything which is not for Shabbos per se, only preparing for after Shabbos. You can't do the dishes. That's why it's a good idea to eat in chad pami, disposables during this Shabbos. So this way you won't have to, or you can even have pans instead of having pots and having to clean the pots. If you have to clean, then you should use your hand to go around, but not to use any. But that's only after, you can only clean it only afterwards, only after Shabbos goes out. Now when Shabbos goes out, which is going to be, let me tell you the exact time. The exact time is 7:37. Let me just make sure, triple check. Okay, in one place. Okay, there are two times here, so I'm just gonna. They're 5 minutes apart, so I'm gonna take the stringent one, which is 7:37 on our website. It says 7:37. That's when Shabbat ends. So we're not allowed to do anything until 7:37. So then, at that point, if you're in a shul, so we'll just daven Maariv, and then afterwards you go home. So that really indicates that Shabbos is over. But if you're home and you want to start preparing, then you say Baruch HaMavdil Bein Kodesh LaKodesh. Blessed who is the one who separates between the holy and holy. On a regular Shabbos, we say Baruch HaMavdil Bein Kodesh LaChol. Blessed who is the one who separates between holiness and weekday. But of course, we're going from Shabbos into Yom Tov, into Pesach, and so there are two different levels of holiness. So Hashem separates between Kodesh, one type of holiness, which is Shabbos, and another type of Kodesh, which is Yom Tov. Only then, it's a type of Havdalah. And of course, later on, during the Kiddush, which we'll talk about in a minute, then we do the regular Havdalah. But for practical purposes, you want to start, it's not just enough that Shabbos is over, but you have to clearly indicate that Shabbos is over, and Hashem separates between Shabbat and Yom Tov, between one Kodesh and another Kodesh. During Maariv, we say a special paragraph called Vatodienu. So after we do, during the Shmona Esrei, there is the special Shmona Esrei for Pesach, the special Shmona Esrei, and in the English Siddur, in both Siddurim, it has it right there. I'm pretty sure that in the English Siddur, I hope I'm not making a mistake, it's a page, here we go, look at that, Baruch Hashem, there's one right over here. Instead of guessing, is 331, page 331, you'll see after Ata B'chartanu, on page 333, there's a paragraph in a shaded area. It's very rare to have a Chag, to have a Yom Tov on Motzai Shabbat. But this Pesach begins on Motzai Shabbat, right after Shabbat. So I'm just going through some part of the practical dinim of having, of moving from Shabbat to Yom Tov. Now, Kiddush. Kiddush is actually very special. It's not a regular Kiddush of the Yom Tov. It's similar, but it's not regular per se. Anytime a Yom Tov falls out on Motzai Shabbat, there's also a Kiddush and there's also Havdalah. So how do you balance all of the above? So here's where we have a rule. It's a Rashi Tevot. It's called Yak Nahaz. Yud Kuf Nun Hey Zayin. If you want to write it down, 5 Hebrew letters. Yud Kuf Nun Hey Zayin. So Yud is Yayin. It's a sign of what the order of the Kiddush which is meant to be made. If you're looking in the Siddur, you're not going to have a problem. It has it right there. I'm just trying to find the exact page. Just one moment, please. Let's see if I can find it quickly in the English Siddur. One moment. I think we're almost there. Bezrat Hashem. Let's see over here. Kiddush. Here we go. Page 357. Page 357, you can mark down in your, I'm sorry, that's Kiddush by day. Wrong one. Nice try. Let's try this over here. Kiddush. Kiddush Rabbah. Here we go. 328. Page 328. I'm just joking. 329. So over here you have the Savri Maranan. We have the Kiddush Bori Priagafen. That's the Yayin. That's the first step of Kiddush. Then is like every Yom Tov, the regular bracha for Kiddush for Yom Tov. Asher Bachabana Mikal Am, Romemana Mikal Hashon, and we have the insert for Chag HaMatzot Hazeh. By the way, if you have you don't need to have the regular siddur for Kiddush, because you're going to have your Haggadah. In the Haggadah, you have everything. So try not to take out your regular siddur. Your regular siddur, if you've been using it anywhere near your chametz table, just put it away for the entire Chag of Pesach. Or if there may just be a little bit of crumbs, just try to flip the pages and try to clean it, that it should be maybe even cover the binding, and so on and so forth, and make sure it doesn't come anywhere near the table, the Pesach, that's for sure. It doesn't come anywhere near the Pesach table. But anything which is like a bencher, like I said earlier, that for sure you should lock away. Okay. Then, before we do the Shechianu, comes Nun. That's the Ner. We don't touch the candle. The candles for the Havdalah, but we use it as the candles that we lit like the Yom Tov candles. We use that for Borei Morei Ha'esh, as we usually do on a regular Motzai Shabbat, but we don't lift them up. We just leave them. Then comes the Havdalah, Hamavdal ben Kodesh l'chol ben Kodesh l'Kodesh. That's the special bracha for Havdalah. So first we did the Kiddush for Pesach, and then we do the Havdalah because we're ending Shabbat. And then finally we do Shechianu v'Kimanu v'Giyanu, blessing Hashem for the special new mitzvah of Pesach. And all of the new mitzvahs of the night. Okay, before we go on to mention a couple of stuff, I want to try to address some questions. Please give me a moment. Okay, we already addressed the subject of a third meal. And we're not going to have any mizonot over here after davening. Please understand, just have your regular meal at home. Make sure before Shabbat, everything should be ready. When do we light the Yom Tov candles? Another question I just got now, and that is, we light it after Shabbat is finished, before the Seder begins. We light it from a pre-existing flame. So after 7:37, we want to make sure that whoever went to shul comes home. So I guess it will be somewhere in the vicinity of 8:15, 8:30. You're allowed to do work. In other words, you're allowed to prepare for the Seder. Whatever's allowed to be done on Yom Tov, you're allowed to do as a preparation. You can't just do regular work, but whatever is allowed to be done before on a regular Yom Tov, you can do after Shabbat goes out, after saying Baruch Hamavdu ben Kodesh LeKodesh, and when everyone comes home and you're ready to start, before Kiddush is made, then the Yom Tov candles are lit once again from a pre-existing flame. Okay, I would like to refer to a couple of points now, which are important to remember. Just 1 second, please. Okay, firstly, last year it was in the beginning of the Corona time, and we did a model Seder online, and it is in on our YouTube channel. Believe that I'm going to be sending it around on the WhatsApp. If you're not on the WhatsApp and you would like to be on it, so please send me a message, and I'll be happy to send you also the model Seder. So it will give you hopefully a good idea, as every year, what to do during the Seder. Having said that, I want to mention a couple of things which I feel are important to emphasize. This is not necessarily connected to Erev Pesach being on Shabbos per se, but nevertheless, I think it's important to emphasize them. Number one, it is a very good idea to sell your chametz with a Chabad rabbi. I'm not putting in a plug here for myself. You're more than welcome to do it with us. It could be with any Chabad rabbi. It could be with any rabbi. Any rabbi, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be Chabad. I'm just emphasizing that the Chabad sale of the chametz is extra special based on the Alter Rebbe's text that he wrote, the Shtar Mechira, how the chametz is supposed to be sold. The truth is that today many rabbis use that system that the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, instituted about 200 years ago. But nevertheless, you can rest assured that the Chabad rabbis do that. And that is, one of the main innovations is that it's written in the document that it's not only that the chametz is being sold to the goy. It's that there is also an Erev Kablan. There is also someone who is a guarantor. That you have to understand, if the goy wants to come and take any chametz during Pesach, he's allowed to do that. He has all the addresses. He's allowed to come, open up, and take whatever he wants. But he has to buy it. He has to pay for it. So he has to give you. It's not just a game. It's a real thing. This is a real sale. So he doesn't pay for it during the quote unquote sale before Pesach, but if he wants to take it, it's clear that he has to pay for it. And so what happens if he doesn't pay for it? He doesn't have enough money. So there's the Erev Kablan, according to the Alter Rebbe, that he backs up, so to speak, the guy, a Jew. The Erev Kablan is a guarantor that should the Gentile not pay up what he needs to, this person will pay it up. So this is a real sale. That's why, according to the Alter Rebbe, by the way, you're allowed to sell real chametz. So many people, not in Chabad, have a custom, and it's totally understandable, to totally get rid of all chametz and not to keep any real chametz at home. But the Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe's grandson, who later became the third Chabad Rebbe, he once did not have any chametz at home, and Erev Pesach, or a day beforehand, he went out to the store and bought real chametz, put it in the cupboard, locked it up, and wrote chametz on it. And he sold, when he sold the chametz to the guy, he sold real chametz. Why? Because he was trying to emphasize how sincere the sale of the chametz is. So if we are extra careful not to have any chametz in the home, that's because, on some level, perhaps, we're not sure if the sale is a real sale. So in order to cover all grounds, we try our best to get rid of the chametz. It's not a bad idea. It's just that you never know if there's other chametz there anyways. So this is a little bit of an extreme thing, but the Tzemach Tzedek wanted to prove that the Alter Rebbe's mechira, the Alter Rebbe's sale, according to the Alter Rebbe's system, text, is a full-fledged sale. So therefore, you're allowed to have real chametz in your home. So just as a practical tip, if after Pesach, 1 hour after Pesach is finished, you want to start eating your chametz again, you're allowed to. Just make sure to put away all the Pesach stuff first, as another little tip. But in principle, theoretically, and practically also, you're allowed to start eating your chametz. So if there's something that you really like, but you've gotten rid of it, it's locked away, it's not yours. You're not allowed to touch it, it's not yours. By the way, if you have chametz, what I'm going to say now does apply to Erev Pesach being on Shabbos. If you have real chametz, really you should not open up a cupboard which you have locked and put chametz in there, because it's not yours. You should really not go there unless you, to begin with, you made sure with your rabbi that you should be able to put chametz in there on Erev Pesach before the time when you have to get rid of the chametz. But just keep things simple. Make sure that you leave before Shabbos just a minimal amount of bread or pita, as we said earlier. And then that is the best way, the best system to make sure that you'll be getting rid of your chametz totally in a kosher way before the time that we're not allowed to have any chametz anymore. Just to explain another interesting point, the reason why we're not allowed to have chametz from the end of the 5th hour is because that's the time when that's the time when we're allowed to bring the korban Pesach, the Pesach offering. And so therefore, the Gemara says that we're not allowed to have the korban Pesach and chametz is still available. So from that we know that we have to totally get rid of the chametz way beforehand. Okay, another couple of important points for every year, but I want to mention it because I think it's very important. The mitzvah is to have 4 cups of wine. If you can't have wine, you can have grape juice. But try really hard to have wine, even if it's 3% alcohol. It's not bad. 3%, nothing is going to happen to you. It's better than having grape juice. But if you can't have wine for whatever reason, then grape juice is fine. Now, the minimal amount of having for each cup is 2.9 ounces. Plan A is to have the entire cup. Plan B is to have most of the cup. So the best idea is to get a small cup, which is 3 or 3.5 or 4 ounces. So then you know that you filled it up to the top. You've done plan A. You've done the best scenario. 4 full cups of wine throughout the Seder in the right times when you're supposed to have each one. Kiddush is number 1, is the first one. And then, of course, we need to lean to the left while we have the cups of wine. And if you follow your Haggadah properly, you'll know when to lean and when not to lean. Excuse me, please. Generally speaking, whenever we do something which is royal, to remember freedom, to remind ourselves that Hashem let us out of Egypt, and we commemorate that, and we also want to feel the royalty and the freedom, then we lean as if we are kings, leaning backwards, slightly to the side, to the left side. Next point. The biblical mitzvah is to have matzah, to eat matzah. How much matzah are we supposed to eat? So I'm going to tell you the minimal amount. The minimal amount is at least 1/3 of a matzah. The best thing is to have at least that a kazayit is a half a matzah. So try to do a half a matzah because then you'll be safe. Now we usually try to do 2 kazaitim, not 1 kazait. 1 kazait is the bare minimum. We try to have 2 olive amounts, which is a complete matzah. So that's when we have 3 times during the Seder. By motzi matzah, we have 1/3 or a half of the top matzah and the middle matzah, the other half of whatever was broken off. And the 3rd matzah is used for korech, for the sandwich. So the first time we have a half of this and half of 2 halves. Then we have for the sandwich, we have another, at least 1 kazayit. It's better to have 2. And then for the afikoman, right before we bench, we have another 2 kazaitim. At least 1. Try to do 2. Now the matzah, when we have the matzah originally, in other words, the first time we have the matzah, in motzi matzah, right after we finish saying the Haggadah, and we drink the 2nd cup, and then we wash rachza, and then we're going to have matzah for the first time. It's important to eat the matzah within 4 minutes. There are different opinions. There are opinions that can be longer, but I'm giving you the opinion that we go by. Now the question is, from when do the 4 minutes begin? The answer is the 4 minutes do not begin from when you put the first bite of amount of matzah into your mouth, rather from when you swallow the matzah for the first swallow. So what we will do is, what you try your best is to chew as much matzah as possible, safely, of course. Don't overdo it. And then you want to try to, once you swallow, then you want to eat quickly, of course, without talking, because we can't talk between the bracha and the eating. And until we complete at least one kazayit, you don't want to talk. You want to make sure that the entire mitzvah is completed properly, and you have the kavanah, you have the proper intentions, and that's how you're doing the mitzvah of the matzah properly. Let me just see if there are any questions. Okay, I'm not sure what the question exactly is. Was it a miracle that we were freed from Mitzrayim? If I understand correctly, it was a tremendous miracle, because not even a slave was able to run away. No one was able to sneak away from Mitzrayim. And so it is a tremendous miracle that Hashem allowed us out of Mitzrayim. We feel like kings. Okay, the answer is the round matzah. The square matzahs are smaller, and so you want to make sure. I don't remember the exact amount, so please send me a message later on by WhatsApp, and I'll tell you the exact weight. So because we're not going to go and weigh them, that's why I tried to give you a general idea of how big the matzah should be in size, not in weight. And based on that, based on the concept of the round matzah, which you could have a pretty good estimate of how large that amount is, you can also compare that to square matzah. But for the Seder, try your best to have round matzahs. If you do not have round matzahs, please let me know, and we'll do our best, Bezrat Hashem, that everybody should have round hand-baked shmura matzahs, at least 3 for the Seder. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'm humbled to be able to learn together with you this interesting, original type of Seder, the original type of Erev Pesach, which falls out on Shabbat, around once every 15 to 20 years. And Amir Hashem, in about 15, 20 years, I look forward to learning with you again and refreshing a little bit of what we've learned now. All the best. Have a happy and kosher Pesach. Feel free to ask me any questions, and I will be happy, Amir Hashem, to look up and to try my best that everyone should have the most joyous and kosher Pesach this year, and we should be able to celebrate Pesach this year in the third Beit HaMikdash. By the way, in the Haggadah, in the bracha that we say before Hagafen, before the second cup of wine, there's a special bracha, and you'll see a little parentheses in the middle, which we do on Motzai Shabbat, like this year, on Saturday night, which is, one of them is Min HaZvachim, Min HaPsachim, and one is Min HaPsachim, Min HaZvachim. If I remember correctly, when it's Motzai Shabbos, first we do Min HaZvachim, and then we do Min HaPsachim. You'll see that in the text, so you don't have to remember it by heart. All the best. Have a great Yontif. I look forward, Amir Hashem, to having a very special Kabbalah Cafe this Wednesday morning in Yerushalayim at 9:30 a.m. Shalom, shalom. If anybody wants to help us, wants to volunteer, on Thursday, starting Thursday morning at 8 o'clock at the Chorev Shul at Ibn Gvirol Street, number 20. We're going to be packing all of the Seder plates and the meals for families. So the more help we can get would be good. And if you have friends that can come, that would be awesome. Yasher Koach. Thank you so much. All the best, and have a happy and kosher Pesach and a good Shabbos.